controversial director, and he's made controversial movies through his entire life. I'm talking about Benedetta, which is quite a movie. It's 131 minutes, and we're talking about 17th century Italy. A young girl who almost died at birth is dropped off at a convent in Pescia in Tuscany by her loving parents. For an appropriate dowry, the Mother Superior, played by Charlotte Rampling, agrees to take her in, although she does receive hundreds of applications and takes only 3 people or 3 youngsters each year. Her name is Benedetta, and this is the young girl at the time who comes in, and she's wedded to Jesus. She carries with her a small wooden statue of the Virgin Mary. Now that's taken from her as the convent has its own life-sized Blessed Virgin to pray to. On her first night in the convent, Benedetta feels alone. She leaves her cell, that's what they call their quarters, to pray in front of the Blessed Virgin. Then a miracle happens. The large figure falls on top of her, and instead of being crushed, as she should have been, she survives without a scratch. Then we move to 18 years later, by which time, not surprisingly, Sister Benedetta, played by Virginie Efira, has become a fixture at the convent, which has strict rules. Now, she has frequent visions of Jesus with her in them. A commotion at the convent sees a dishevelled young woman called Bartolomea, played by Daphne Petechia, beg to be taken in, against the wishes of Bartolomea's angry father. Fortunately, Benedetta's dad, Giuliano, played by David Clavell, and mother, Medea, Clotilde Courreau, are visiting at that time, having watched Benedetta act in a play at the convent. They agree to pay for this distraught young woman's tuition and pay off Bartolomea's father to allow her to remain in the convent. So suddenly you've got this other woman in the convent who's been let in by virtue of Benedetta's father and mother. Now, unlike Benedetta, Bartolomea has had a red past. She's immediately drawn to Benedetta, and Benedetta doesn't know what to make of her physical attraction to Bartolomea. Benedetta continues having visions, placing her with Jesus, and after one such episode, she starts bleeding uncontrollably from her hands and feet, in keeping with the stigmata. Although the Mother Superior remains unconvinced, she's forced to relinquish what role she has at the convent in favour of Benedetta, who takes over as the Mother Superior. Meanwhile, Benedetta has become embroiled in a hot and heavy lesbian affair with Bartolomea, the consequences of which will be far-reaching. Benedetta the movie, well, it's the work of a filmmaker, as I say, who's been known for pushing the envelope not once, not twice, but many times. I speak of Paul Verhoeven, the man behind Basic Instinct. And I assure you he does not hold back here either. He's co-written the piece, inspired by the real events, with David Burke, with whom he collaborated on Elle, and, of course, Verhoeven directs. And it's based upon a book by Judith C. Brown titled Immodest Acts, The Life of a Lesbian Nun in Renaissance Italy. Well, I was going to say, is there no shame, but clearly not when it comes to Paul Verhoeven and movie making, Greg King.
Yes, well, Alice, I don't make many movies about lesbian nuns these days, but thankfully Verhoeven here is to film this.
And they made many movies about lesbian nuns.
Yeah, in the 70s and 80s there were quite a lot of them, but not in the mainstream cinema. But thankfully Paul Verhoeven is here to fill this cinematic void, and as you said, he's often courted controversy. This one's more akin with the lurid, trashy showgirls than anything else there. But he explores the misogyny, the hypocrisy, the corruption and the abuse of powers in the Catholic Church in medieval Europe there. And with its heady, melodramatic mix of religion, sex and debauchery, Benedetta also has invites comparisons to Ken Russell's controversial 1971 drama, The Devils there. I thought Charlotte Rampling brought sort of an icy demeanour and to her performance here as the Mother Superior. Efira gives a brave, uninhibited and committed performance here as the sexually voracious Benedetta there, and she embraces the explicit demands of the role here with much the same enthusiasm as Elizabeth Berkley tackled her role in Showgirls there, I thought. As you said, Alex, Verhoeven lacks subtlety, and there's some quite raw and explicit sex scenes here. But it's been beautifully shot, I thought, tastefully done by cinematographer Jeannie Lepore there, and it features some great production design, I thought, as well.
Well, Dave, what's your take on all of this? Benedetta, it's certainly out there, isn't it?
Yeah, look, Verhoeven to me is one of the most interesting directors of my lifetime. That I can't believe that the same man who made movies like Basic Instinct, RoboCop, Starship Troopers can then go and make a movie like he did a few years ago, like Elle, which was a film that I really enjoyed, and then make a film like Benedetta. Now, Benedetta's interesting because it is loosely based on a true story. So some of the things that he explores in this film actually happened. I will admit I found it a fascinating film, especially going into the areas of stigmata and things like that, because that is something that I've always been very interested in, modern day miracles and such. I thought that its take on the church and the corruption at the time actually was what made this a watchable film. I don't know if he had to go as far as he did with some of the sex scenes, but then again, as I said, it's based on a true story, so apparently some of the things that he put into this film were based on recollections that were recorded at the time. So, look, it's interesting. I don't know how you would go about calling it an historical, factual film, but look, it's worth the price of admission to go and have a look at it, I think.
Well, the internal workings of the church certainly given it working over, and the church hardly comes out smelling roses. A number of the leading actors are given very strong characterizations. They play up these characterizations to full effect. I mean, as the Mother Superior, Charlotte Rampling comes across as a woman not to be trifled with. Virginia Efira is a manipulator extraordinaire as Benedetta, and Daphne Patachia is hardly a saint as the wild child Bartolomea. And I thought Lambert Wilson was quite ruthless as the papal ambassador from Florence. I thought it was an intriguing film, a decidedly different take on faith, Peter.
Definitely, and Paul Verhoeven, his films, in the most part, deal with extremes of the human condition and looking at what happens when things go to their logical conclusion, so to speak. And what impressed me about this film is that the mixing of sexuality and faith and the whole idea of Catholicism and the way it can intrude into that sort of workspace, if you like to put it that way, really intrigued me. I can see why the film was given an R rating, because of the way that the implement was used in a particular way.
I think we've got to be careful, and I think you've put it extremely well. But I mean, I dare say some will be horrified. Others will be drawn to the lewdness and the dichotomies presented. So, I mean, he makes a movie like this. He knows he's going to stir up a hornet's nest, doesn't he? I mean, he goes in here and does this consciously. It's not something that he does. It's a deliberate attempt to. He apparently, reading about Verhoeven, he has an interest in the church. I mean, he has got something to say. So, I mean, is it legitimate? Is it interpretation? I mean, how do you look at it, Peter?
I think it's something that is worth debating, because the theological aspects of the role of the church and that belief and faith and the way that can go into an extreme sort of situation is really well explored in this film. And we should remember, or we should note, that the film also has a strong reference to Joan of Arc, and the film also strongly relates to the 1920s silent film starring Falconetti, where she was in the Passion of Joan of Arc. The idea of how belief can be so intense that you'd sacrifice yourself for the notion that you might well be an incarnation of Jesus Christ. I really found that quite fascinating, and I found it a very impressive film.
So, what would you give it out of 10, Peter?
I gave it 8 out of 10.
Wow, okay. Dave?
Yeah, I'm going a little bit higher than Peter, actually. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. It's a film I want to go back and watch again, so yeah, that doesn't happen very often, so Yeah, 9 out of 10 for me.
Oh, Dave? Sorry, Greg?
A bit lower than those two. I'm going to give it 6.5 to 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 too. It's Benedetta. It's R-rated for very good reason. And it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but it certainly is going to continue to court controversy. Let's